And I think my summation is that the way you build trust is just do what you said you're going to do. Right?
That's it.
Do it again. And then do it again. And then do it. And just be consistent. If I go back to that story with MultiChoice, one of the biggest hurdles for them was that this company, Paga, who we've never heard of, by the way, and who is new, clearly, because they've told us they're new, is going to hold our funds. And they're telling us they're not going to put down a single collateral.
Welcome to Becoming Radical, the podcast for creators, builders, and dreamers just like you. What does it mean to become radical in a world of constant change? Hosted by Michael Gaizutis, each week we'll explore the real-time journeys of those rewriting the rules. From untold failures to groundbreaking success. If you're ready to break the boundaries of limited thinking, this is your guide to unlimited growth.
Welcome to Becoming Radical. Really excited to be here with everybody again today. I am joined by Tayo Oviosu, who is the founder and CEO of Paga, which is a pioneering mobile payments company that has truly transformed how people access and use money. Tayo, it's wonderful to have you here. I'm very excited to have a conversation with you today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate it. And excited to be here and have this discussion with you.
Yeah, likewise. Well, to say you've been successful is a huge understatement. I know that you've served over 26 million users and growing under your leadership, under your bold vision. Your background, really exciting. We touched on this a little bit today about how, you were in Africa and then you went to California for about 14 years. I know you pursued an MBA from Stanford. Today's goal is to share your story, to talk about you, and to really get our listeners and our viewers dialed into that and your radical journey. So to set that up for success, I want to talk a little bit about, that personal or professional moment that sparked the idea for Paga. What was that epiphany light bulb moment that hit you?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you. When I moved back to Nigeria, it was with a really strong passion to be part of the economic redevelopment of Nigeria. Growing up in Nigeria was the giant of Africa. And that whole thing today, it's the largest country on the continent of Africa. It's going to be larger than the US in about 10 years.
Wow.
And so it still has the potential of being, the country you think about when you think about Africa, right?
Amazing.
So for me, I moved back and I joined a private equity firm, but then I quickly ran into problems with payments. I literally carry wads of cash around with me. I was back with 2 banks, but I couldn't make payments efficiently. The epiphany moment I had was really like, wait a second, right? For any country to really hit its potential, you have to make payments and access to financial services and after, right? And that's really surprised me. I want to see the day that Africa, for anyone, individual, business, payments and access to finance is an afterthought.
100%.
And the first major aha moment I had was that, I could think about how I could get myself into a digital wallet. I had used PayPal, right? I used PayPal by SMS in the US.
Yep.
But how do you get those who are not digitally enabled, who are not digitally savvy? Right? So the aha moment I had there was like, wait a second. In every neighborhood, there's a neighborhood store. So you just go and you get that store digitally enabled. And then they provide services into the community, right? And that's how we build out this network of retail agents who are mom and pop shops across Nigeria, and they provided services, and that's how we actually initially got going.
It's a brilliant idea, and it's a really underserved play to think about how we can enable these mom and pop businesses, these retailers, to enable people to transact through this payment platform. It's a really smart move. Kudos to you on that. Very exciting. What problem were you most passionate about solving when you launched the company at first? I know you talked about the idea of enabling payments for people, but was there a bigger problem that enabled this passion behind solving this?
Yeah. In fact, I think the key thing was honest of my own problem, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I would go to a
Yeah.
restaurant and pay cash. I'm like, why am I doing that? So I
Yeah.
actually, the main problem I want to solve, and
Yeah.
still is like, how do we just simplify
Yep.
and get rid of the friction between a customer and a merchant, right?
Right.
Making an in-person payment, making an online payment, how do we get rid of that friction?
Yeah.
And I'm actually really excited because, that vision, it's taken longer and longer, but we've made a ton of progress. And actually
Yeah.
we're just launching the fulfillment of the vision on the merchant side. So we have built a product called Doroki that is similar to Square, right?
Cool.
And actually where, we just launched Doroki version 2. And it gives different types of stores and retailers in Nigeria the software they need to manage their business, right? So think of our business today. So Doroki is the software the supermarket would use to manage their inventory, to check you out at the till, right? It's your restaurant will use to take your order, send the order to the kitchen to be made, and then to pay for you to pay your bill. We use it for managing their schedule and the calendar, right? And so we have built a solution that is tailor-made for different segments of businesses. Cool. And ultimately, the goal is that not only do we help digitize their businesses and get rid of this friction with their customers, but we actually use that way to finance their businesses as well. And so, if I take a step back, so that's actually, when you say like, what's the problem? I was trying to like that is the problem.
Yeah.
We're really trying to, get there. And ultimately, today, the way we think about what we're building is that we want to be the global financial ecosystem for the growing middle class of Africa, and give access to global commerce starting right here in Nigeria, right? And so that means giving merchants the tools that they need to be able to manage their business and operate.
Right.
Give individuals and consumers a mobile app that they can access financial services on, similar to PayPal, Venmo, right? And building that ecosystem around that. And so we have those two products as our direct-to-market, Doroki for the merchants, Paga for the consumers. And then what we have done, and this is a bit of a pivot, and maybe we'll talk about it, Michael, but like this is a pivot. 3 years, is that we realized that all of what we had built, the infrastructure we built, the ability to hold multi-currency wallets, the ability to plug into the banking system in a real-time way, ability to plug into Visa in a real-time way, were capabilities that were very valuable to other businesses to help them accelerate. So we open up all of that infrastructure to them. So we actually have the business. We call that Paga Engine. And we now have 200 companies that are building on Paga Engine. Right. So we have, businesses building on Paga Engine, taking services from us, accelerating their go-to-market. On direct businesses as well.
That's incredible. Very, very cool. On the other side of my life, for the last 15 years, I told you, I run a branding and digital agency. We do a lot of work in fintech, financial technology. And some of our clients are very large white label solutions powering very large financial technology infrastructure. So think the engine behind HSBC or TD Bank, right? They're empowering those engines, right? But what you've built here is very, very cool. And it sounds like there's a lot of passion, a lot of problems, and you're solving them all at the same time. Very, very
and there's still a long way to go, right? But it's really exciting when you see the impact.
Absolutely.
Having on people directly, on the small businesses directly, and maybe see growth of our partners, right? That's really exciting.
I love that. It's hard to think back. Sometimes we get so stuck in where we are, right? We're walking down a path, and we're where we are today, but we never really we never turn around and look backwards. Sometimes we forget to do that. I think it's important. You left a successful career in the US. You returned to Nigeria. What gave you that conviction to take that step to do so, that leap forward?
That's probably one of the biggest decisions I've made in my life because
Yeah.
I was very happy with my life in Silicon Valley,
Yep.
and living in San Francisco, working in San Jose at Cisco. And, you know, I was working on a project for Cisco that was taking me to South Africa quite a lot.
Yep.
And a number of my friends in South Africa kept encouraging me to say, look, this is in 2008. That, you should think about moving back to Nigeria. Right.
Yeah.
And one of them, Fred Swanica, he said something that really to me. He said, Tayo, Nigeria felt to him like where India and China were 15 years before. Right?
Wow.
And, look, if you look at the people who went back to India 15 years before, they're now no longer just Indian conglomerates. They're global names.
Yeah.
Tata, Infosys, ArcelorMittal. And he's like, that's the kind of impact you can go have.
Yeah.
Right? It's a full global brand that would change the face of Nigeria, be part of that, but also like be a global.
It's incredible.
And that really hit home to me. And I think maybe I was also influenced by being in the beautiful scenery of Bhutan, right? And meditating and like thinking about my life and my life as I was backpacking across Bhutan. But it was in Bhutan I made the decision that I was gonna go back home. And I was going to pursue a different path. And, and a lot of people called it radical. So I really like, you'll be radical. Like it's become radical. Like, and when I decided to move, I left nothing behind. And I still remember very vividly, I had a connecting flight in Chicago. And sitting in Chicago, and as I got back on the plane, I have like multiple steps. I was going from Chicago to London and then London to Lagos. And then as I got on the plane and we're taxiing, I was like, "This is it," So I'm leaving the U.S. and and I didn't leave anything behind. I packed the container, and single thing was moved. Right,
it's incredible.
And the idea was, I didn't want to give myself the option of easily coming back. Because I'm a citizen, so I was like, okay, I could always come back. Right. And so that was a big move for me. And I think that idea of being part of the growth of Nigeria and it's playing out in a way that I didn't imagine, right? Because I didn't picture starting a company just 9 months or less than 12 months later, right? But what I had pictured was, to do private equity for maybe 5 years, know the market, get to build my network, and I can figure out what to do and how I want to do it. But I did think I would just
scale.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so that was, that's what got me back,
Very cool. It's very exciting. It's amazing when we think about these radical journeys, and we highlight a lot of these, right? We think about our own stories, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. It's incredible to really take a minute to self-reflect, to think about, the inflection points that got us there. Paga has scaled to millions of users, right? As a platform. What were some of those biggest early inflection points for Paga as a business, as a brand?
One of the early pivotal moments for us was really our first big client, MultiChoice. They're the large cable subscription company or satellite in Africa. And when we first met them, we said, "Hey, we'd love people to pay for MultiChoice on Paga on their mobile phones." Right? Please. Right? Like people go to our offices to make payments, right? Which does. And about a week later, they called us and said, "Hey, can you solve this other problem for us?" And we're like, "Yeah, absolutely." So, okay, cool. So we're going to do this integration. And as long as people pay and their television is on, we'll turn them on. And it was amazing. And their stores started using Paga. All their retailers were using Paga. And the integration was literally, Michael, 2 human beings sitting, waiting for an email that said, Michael had paid for his cable. Here's his account number.
Wow.
And we did that for 6 months. So talk about things that don't scale. We did that for 6 months. And it enabled us to connect directly into their systems in South Africa. We're the first they ever allowed to do that, right? Like, And so that still stays with me as a big pivotal moment because it gave us a use case that allowed us to take off. And then the other pivotal moment that comes to mind for me now is, maybe 3 years ago, right? Talking to other entrepreneurs about the challenges that they were having. And I'm realizing that the trouble that we're trying to solve in payments for their businesses or financial services for their businesses were things that Paga had solved itself. And that based on the licenses and the capabilities we had, we could do it in a way that a Flutterwave could not do for them, right? Which is another payments company here, or Paystack, a company acquired by Stripe, could not do for them. And so he actually took a decision, and this is a real pivot because we didn't imagine this before, to open our entire infrastructure and our entire platform to other people.
Wow.
And the way we think about it is the way I think Amazon thinks of AWS to Amazon. Right? Is that they were using this infrastructure and they realized that, wait a second, other people could also use this infrastructure and we could build it bigger, better, faster, and give people confidence because we're also using it.
Makes sense.
And it doesn't matter if those companies are competing with other parts of our business, like Netflix is on AWS, right? Though Prime Video wants to beat Netflix in the market, right? Focus on helping Netflix be successful, right? So that's the view we took, and so we launched that now about 16 quarters ago, and it's been very successful. And we're really grateful for the companies that are using our platform with global names as well, Nigerian names,
incredible.
And are daily just growing, and we're just focused on how do we help them scale, right? And how do we make sure
very cool
reliability for their businesses. So these are two real pivotal moments for me in the trajectory of the business. I mean, there are many other moments, but when I look at those, you can see the inflection points very clearly in the business.
Right. You've been able to chart that, which is really cool to understand. Okay, there were a lot of different moments in time, but these were two very pivotal inflection points. Very exciting. How do you build trust in a market where many people were unfamiliar with digital finance? I think that's a big question. You know, they're obviously not as versed as you might be, or I might be, or others might be. How do you build that trust early stage?
Yeah, this is a critical thing for our business. And it's something that we hammer on in our values over and over with the team, is that we're in a business of trust. And I think my summation is that the way you build trust is just do what you said you're going to do. Right?
That's it.
Do it again. And then do it again. And then do it again. And just be consistent. If I go back to that story with MultiChoice, one of the biggest hurdles for them was that this company, Paga, who we've never heard of, by the way, and who is new, clearly, because they've told us they're new, is going to hold our funds. And they're telling us they're not going to put down a single collateral. And I remember the meeting with their CEO and CFO, and the CFO was, I don't even know you from anywhere. And I said, his name was Lionel. I said, Lionel, the day we don't pay you your money is the day our business dies. Right? Because we will lose completely your trust, and we will not be able to gain anybody else's trust. And we're not going to be a collateral, and we're going to do this business. And, a year later, they've never blinked because there's not been a day that they've not money. Right? And so it's about every day just continuing to do that. And I've seen it over and over with the agents, merchants in our business, and with consumers. And it's not to say that there will not be errors, that things may not go wrong, but when they do, we raise our hand and say we made a mistake, something went wrong, there was a bug here, the bug there, but your money is safe. Like that to me is like the key thing. Nobody could say I lost my money on block, right?
It's huge. Yeah. I think trust comes with progress. Progress comes with doing what you say you're going to do, being consistent at scale, and then taking accountability for whatever it is that happened and doing your best to resolve. I mean, that's the key. Mistakes happen always. Taking ownership of those mistakes is imperative.
And then internally just saying to people, it's okay to also make a mistake. If you make a mistake, let's mess up, let's learn from it. But let's not hide it. Right? Like there's no hiding of anything.
Yeah, absolutely. How has the fintech ecosystem in Nigeria changed since you started? What do you see as the biggest turning points in that space?
Yeah. Well, when I started, it didn't even exist, right? There was no word
Yeah,
for
right,
it. Yeah. So,
right. Huge.
and now it's not just the fintech ecosystem, but the tech ecosystem in
Yeah,
Lagos is, I
yeah,
think, Africa. And it's quite robust and lots of exciting opportunities. And the
yeah.
way it changed over time was really just people, convening others together, right?
Right,
There's a
right.
guy named Osita. Literally today, he sends me an email about a pitch competition, and I was like, Osita
Yeah,
was one of the first people that just said, "Hey guys, yes, there are only like 6 entrepreneurs, but let's get together for a drink, right? And
yeah,
let's
yeah, absolutely.
uh, and that has slowly actually that get together now is like the annual ritual of all tech. In December
Very
there's a
cool.
festival, right?
Very
That he
cool.
does, and everybody comes out. It's a fun environment.
Yeah,
It's like carnival,
maybe.
right? Like, the way he's done.
Yeah, of course,
And
of course.
then there's during the year serious things that happen. But I think
Yeah,
this is how it just evolved of like people
yeah,
mentoring other people, meet up for coffee, and for
of
me
course.
actually personally, it was interesting. It's been interesting because I take those meetings on a weekend as a way to also
Mm.
get my mind away from Paga.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
that business, that's interesting. Well, let me understand what you're doing. How can I be helpful to you?
yeah.
And then it soon became where me and a friend of mine were like, wait a second, I see a lot of these opportunities. Maybe we should angel invest. So let's pull a group of friends
Mm.
together and then we
Cool.
angel invest. And then we started seeing more and more people getting into angel investing and the
That's
ecosystem
great.
growing from that
Yeah,
perspective as well.
yeah,
Um, and then now you also have more Series A funds coming out.
yep,
So I think it's been a journey, but I think
yeah,
there's definitely been a desire from the entrepreneurs to give back to those coming,
yeah.
and to build more opportunities for people where to get things that we didn't have when we were
Right.
coming.
100%. Yeah. As an entrance to market, as CEO, how has your leadership style evolved, you think, over time? What have you seen transformationally happen as the years have gone on?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I mean, like I remember when I was at Cisco and sitting at
Mm.
boards
Oh,
for
yeah.
Cisco, um,
Yeah.
I always felt like my view of what the CEO was going through was theoretical, right?
Mm.
Like I could think about
Mm.
the problem, but I never experienced it myself. I've never like been in
Oh,
his
yeah.
shoes.
Yeah.
And the people that added the most value on the board meetings had been operators before.
Right. Right.
So one of the things in my mind, because long term I do want to go back into venture, but one of the things in my
Yeah.
mind was like I wanted to operate myself and get to feel
Mm.
what it's like. So my leadership has been a journey, right? In terms of how I approach things. I hate micromanaging
Yeah.
personally,
Yep.
and so I'm
Yeah.
a big believer in give people ownership, let them
Yep.
truly understand the remit of what they're responsible for, and let them run.
Yep.
Right, hire
Yep.
people who are better than
100%.
you, who are smarter than you, and let them give them the
Always.
freedom to fly. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm very people centric, I think, in how I think about the organization because it's very much
Mm.
about people, right, at
Yes.
every level.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think honoring that and being true to that day in and day out has been
Yes.
a key driver for me and how I think
Yeah.
about the org. I'm I'm sure you saw was it last year where there was a whole conversation about like the founder mode, right? Like what
Mm.
founder mode is, right?
Yep.
And I think during that time, I was like, wow, maybe this is putting words to something that I do that that has been in my head and like, is this right? But it's like,
Yeah.
because I wonder, I have this freedom to go in and out of
Right.
any part of the business, right?
Right.
And to get
Right.
feedback on any part of the business, right?
Yeah.
And I think that drives me as well, in that I am quite knowledgeable about what's going on in my business across most everywhere. But I also love when I show up and I don't really know what's happening. And I see things. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Uh, and someone like, well, you guys did that. I'm like, oh, really? Like, that's cool. I didn't know that.
It's very neat. Yeah.
So I also like those moments, but I think as a leader, I like to be very engaged. I like to, broad strokes, I know strategy of the three business lines, what the key things are working on. I'm available to help, right? If they need me to pinch hit, come in on a sales call or call someone.
Absolutely.
I love product, so I do get very involved in the product, in the product design. I got an award as the best tester, right, of our product.
Yeah.
So I make sure I test all our products very, personally.
Right.
So I think as a leader, my general approach is, I really do believe in this thing that I think I got from Stanford Business School, which is leaders know thyself. And if you know yourself well, then you're able to know how you impact other people and be able to lead them more effectively. And so that's something that I've taken very personally, and then also with my leaders. And then maybe the last thing I'll say is, for the most, if I like to think about the team as a sports. And I'm a big soccer fan. Chelsea football. And when I think about that, I say, look, in Chelsea Football Club today, there is the hands down best player on the team is Cole Palmer, right? So not everybody is Cole Palmer, but the other people on the team are really good as well in what they do.
Of course.
And there's Cole Palmer. He's special, right? And Cole Palmer, for especially would be horrible as our goalkeeper.
Right?
So for all the complaints we have about a goalkeeper, Cole Palmer cannot be the
That's right.
So I really think it's important then to make sure that people are in the right role for
of course. 100%. Yes. You're absolutely right.
And so using that as a metaphor that helps drive a conversation on where we put people, how we think about it, how we think about the team construction, and how we allow people to fly, I think is a real key part of how I leadership.
Yeah. It's so huge. I think recognizing talent, rewarding opportunity set, and being results driven without the micromanagement piece is huge. And you're right. Recognizing talent is key. You can place anybody in any role. That doesn't mean they will thrive. It mean it will make sense. I remember for myself, I years ago, early on, I was an account exec somewhere, but they had me making copies. That's all I did every day. Instead of selling, instead of nurturing relationships, building the company, helping to scale operations, I just made copies for 8 hours a day. And it wasn't tied to the role, right? And another scenario, I was a project manager. I'm a horrible project manager. Right? So it's about market, it's about role fit. And I think sometimes the roles don't exist. And you have to recognize the talent. You have to reward the opportunity. You have to let them drive those results, not micromanage too. That's huge because if you have the right people in the right roles and they feel enabled, within the team environment itself, then greatness can happen because they know something so much better or different than you do, right? And they're able to complement and create that market velocity. As you're in market today, as you're thinking about new markets and new verticals, it can be very, very beneficial, 100%. Yes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think, and that even giving people the freedom to also be able to raise their hand and say that,
absolutely,
actually, here's what I think I'm really good at, and what I
absolutely
out of that, right? I think that's really great.
And that brings me to a question: how do you maintain within Paga a mission-driven culture as the company grows, as it evolves, as it scales?
Yeah, no, and we're very, very mission driven. We like to, look, we call it our massive transformative purpose is that, we want to make it simple for 1 billion people to access and use money, right?
Wow.
And I think for me, one of the early days things was actually, I remember when we first came together, there were only about 8 of us in the company to form what was our vision mission back then, and realizing all these that actually what I had framed as our mission and vision was not inspiring to the people in the room.
Right.
Wait a second, you guys left all your jobs to join me on this journey. And this is what I told you. But they saw something
Yeah.
else, right? But it made me realize
Yeah.
that vision and mission has to be ours jointly.
Yes.
It can't just be
Shared. Yes.
shared. And
Yeah.
so even when we refined, which we've only refined one other time to what we have today. And actually, when we did that, one of the things we said is, why do we have a mission and a vision? Like, there's really a
Yeah.
purpose we're all after here. And like, what is it? Like,
Yeah.
and then we came up with this. Um, and then there were about 20 of us in the room, right?
Yeah.
And so the way we maintain that is that we live it and we repeat it. We talk about it.
Yep.
This thing with values. Our values are not just words on a wall somewhere.
Yeah.
It's they actually promote literally. And so I meet with, I try to move every new person that joins the company. I have,
cool.
meet the new CEO. I'll meet the CEO with new staff once a month.
Yeah.
And it's just a catch up. It's like 1 hour. They talking and them talking with me and asking me questions.
Of course.
But one of the things I kick off with is really about the purpose. Why are we doing what we do, right? And and why it's important. And we reinforce that in our town halls. We reinforce it through the organization, right?
Yep.
And I think that is how you help people connect the dots. I go as far as a very common thing in Nigeria is to have drivers, right? Or to have admin staff, which are, that do work for you. And I say everyone, all the way to the driver, must be purpose driven, right? Because
absolutely,
if he slacks off, that's me likely missing a meeting. That has impact to the business. And so he understands his impact to the goal.
Yep.
And so he's bought in as well, right? And I think all the way down, everyone being bought into the mission, to the purpose.
100%. Yeah. 100%. I think it's so important. And again, it's really aligned with the bigger vision, but then the micro view and the macro view, as to what they're doing in the day to day and how that plays such an instrumental role in the bigger, longer term vision for the brand, for the business, for the team. 100%. We're talking vision here, right? So what's your long term vision for Paga beyond payments? What does that look like?
Yeah. Michael, what drives me is really, I want to see a day where across Africa, whether you're an individual or you're a business, payments or financial services is an afterthought, where you don't even think about it. And you're just able to be alive, thrive, right? And have access to services that you want, right? We want Africans to have the freedom to thrive, right? Like, and that's really what we know about. And so me, the big vision is really about that. And whether that is that we do that directly through Paga and Doroki or indirectly through Paga Engine, right? It's about how do we accelerate and enable, Africans to thrive. Right. I think the statistic is that by 2050, Africa will have the largest middle class in the world.
Wow.
Right. And the definition of middle class, using the AFDB definition, is still about $4 a day. So it's still not as wealthy necessarily, but it's the largest middle class. And that middle class needs to be plugged into the global commerce ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
And so it's about solving locally, but also have access to global commerce.
Yeah.
Is really important.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense to me. And I think it's a smart play to have that seamless integration. It should just exist, right? And you're solving for that, which is remarkable.
The story I tell people is, a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to be in San Francisco, and I took Waymo for the first time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I actually took it 3 times in the span of 3 days or 4 days in San Francisco. And, and I tell the story, and the first Waymo I took was 16 minutes. The next one was actually 40 minutes. And when I tell the story, like, the 40-minute trip, like what actually, I felt an emotion that I hadn't expected to feel, which is actually, I felt by myself with no driver. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. What are you going to do now? Yeah. What are you going to do now? No driver.
Yeah. It's no driver. Like, I actually think there's a still play there for them to like let you talk to someone.
Yeah.
Talk to the AI or to the person who's watching the ride. But But the thing I never talk about when I tell the story is that I had any issue with payments. None. I literally, 5 minutes before I took my first ride, downloaded the app. It plugged into my Apple Pay. I used my card, made the payment, and I won it. And nobody talks about the payment, but the payment is so critical to the experience, right?
Yeah, it's huge.
And it would have added a lot of friction if there was some other approach. Imagine if you had to go look for a booth, right, and put a coin in, do something exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you just completely mess up the experience, right? Or as was the case every time, when I was living in the US, if I want to get a new car, I literally just walk into the car dealership. I'd try a car out, and then I sit down, I fill a form out, and in a matter of, back then it was an hour. I'm sure they've improved it now. I get approved and I walk out with a car, right? I can't do that in Africa. Like nobody does that. Everybody buys their car cash, right?
Wow.
Like there is no financing. Your rent is paid a year in advance. Cash. Everyone that has a home has had to bring out cash to buy that house, save for it.
Incredible.
And when I even talk about my iPhone with my friends in the US, I'm like, I paid $1,000 for this iPhone. They're like, what? Why? And I'm like, there's no credit to buy this iPhone.
Wow.
And so the issue is quite large, right?
Oh, yeah. Massive.
For individuals and businesses. So I want a day when all of that is solved. And we're not going to do it alone. It's going to take a lot of players to solve it. But we're well on our way, and we'll be a key part of that. And in doing so, I think we will not only make impact on society, but also build a multi-billion-dollar business as we do it.
Very, very cool. Man, it's very exciting. I think it's amazing to know how much can change and how quickly with technology, and how it can really act as a catalyst for growth, if done the right way. And you're right, the friction points that can exist become less and less friction driven. If you look at what Tesla has done with the automotive experience, specifically in buying a Tesla. I remember, I don't have a Tesla anymore, but I did for a period of time. Back in 2021, I purchased a Tesla kind of peak COVID. They delivered it in my garage. At the time they were doing delivery. It was really exciting. I've never had anything like that happen before. We've always gone to the dealer on a car, right?
Sure.
And the app experience was so frictionless. It was so easy to just buy a car. You apply at the time, interest was great. You apply, you go through the whole process, and within less than 5 minutes, you're done with the entire thing, right? And then literally same day, same night, they're pulling in the car into my garage. They're closing the garage door. It's insane, right? It's like totally insane. Now, obviously, things have changed post-COVID, peak COVID. They don't do that anymore.
Sure.
But long story short, really cool experience with the frictionless system of payments and creating that loan experience, which you don't find even still across all these different car dealerships and automotive brands. But to your point, the payment system is so critical. And I think, looking at Africa as a whole, there is so much opportunity set for Paga and other brands and entities to thrive, because it is so cash driven and it's so reliant on this traditional way of doing business. But as technology changes, as people change, as class status changes, as growth occurs, technology should align, and then we're able to bring better accessibility to market. So fascinating stuff. I want to talk really. Yeah, very exciting, and very radically different. Very, very cool. How do you stay grounded? You're leading a fast-growing company. What is a way you ground yourself? I know we talked about meditation before, but what are the key drivers for you to stay grounded in such a fast-moving environment?
Yeah, look, I think I'm very fortunate to have a very supportive wife who's also an entrepreneur.
Cool. Yeah.
And she, actually, it's interesting the way she would answer the question is that she runs, right? And that motivates me as well, right? So that's the impact on me, is it motivates me to run or to at least hit the gym, right? And make sure that I'm living and thinking about my health and my wellness as well.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
but then I think the other thing that really keeps me grounded are our kids. We have two kids who are wonderful,
Mhm.
5 and 2.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Yeah.
and so they keep me young,
Yep.
and playful, um,
Yep.
and just realizing that, you know, while there's a big vision that I'm going after, that I'm working with my team on, that I spend a lot of waking hours thinking about, that what
Yeah.
truly matters is actually them, right? And is the
Yeah.
time I spend with loved ones, and the people
Absolutely.
who would be there for you, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think just always coming back to center with them, I think is actually the
That's
biggest thing that keeps me
it's
grounded.
huge. Yeah, it's huge. I think once you put everything back into perspective and you take a very large step back, you realize that those family connections, those friends you have, those are your anchor. That's what you come back to. Why are you building this? Why are you trying to create this level of impact? It's
Right.
for all of those people, for yourself, and for the bigger vision of the community and the
Right.
world, right? But you're absolutely right, and I totally relate. I have two kids as well, so I
Oh,
understand. It's
yeah.
it's really
All irritating.
important to think. Yeah. Yeah. So mine are our kids are 10 and 7, just turned 7.
Okay.
So a little bit older,
Cool.
but a
Well, yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
stuff happens. Never dull.
I can
That's
imagine.
for sure.
I can
Yeah.
imagine.
So talking about one of the last questions I have for you today, I could go on for a long time, but one of the last ones I have for today is, what advice would you give as a young
Mm,
entrepreneur trying to build in general or build in Africa today? What advice would
yeah.
you give to them as they're building, as they're coming up
Yeah.
with a new idea to get into market?
Yeah. So the advice I would give
Yes.
new entrepreneur is probably the advice that I got when I got started. A friend of mine, Kanye Dolmo, who's a fantastic human being and entrepreneur out of South Africa, gave me this advice. And she said, don't waste your time on a business plan.
Yes.
And just think, what is the next thing you need to do to prove this idea, and do it.
Yep.
And then once you
Yep.
do it, ask the question again, and then do it.
Yeah.
And then just
Yeah.
going, right?
Yep.
And we didn't write a business plan or something that looked like a business plan on Paga
Yeah.
until Series A. And we
Oh.
never looked at it again.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's gone. So that's one angle I would give. The
Yeah.
other is actually something that we've implemented in Paga, I think, over the last 3 years. We got from Amazon, which
Yeah.
is to not do presentations internally.
Ah.
No presentations. So we
Yeah.
write in full prose everything.
Yep.
So if we're
Okay.
going a strategy session, if we're going to a meeting, you have to write out your thoughts.
Yeah.
And then we get there. And also the idea that nobody reads ahead. So
Yeah.
nobody does that homework ahead. So we get in the meeting and we
Right.
have study time. And we have
Right.
study time and you read, and then we ask clarification questions, and
Yep.
then we discuss. Right. And I've actually
Yeah.
found that to be quite good, and it improves the quality
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
conversation you end up having with the team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's fascinating advice. Great advice. And this entire conversation has been amazing. We appreciate and value your time here. I know you're busy, you're building, you're changing the game, you're becoming radical, as we've talked about. Where can everybody find you? If they want to look you up,
Yeah.
Tayo, where can they find you? Where can they find Paga? Would love to share that
Yeah.
with our listeners and our viewers.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, you can find Paga at paga.com.
Mhm.
And then, I think that could lead you to our infrastructure business, which is pagaengine.com, and then
Mhm.
Doroki.com. And our social handles are also Paga and Doroki. And then for me personally, I think I live on Twitter. So, or
Yeah.
X, we call it. So
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
at Oviosu, or LinkedIn Oviosu as well.
Yep.
I don't remember the last time I pulled up Facebook, so let's not
Yeah.
do it. No, I love my friends that work at Facebook. I love Meta. They're a big client of ours. Love them.
Yeah.
I use
course.
WhatsApp. So shout out
Yeah.
to WhatsApp.
Yep.
Um,
Totally.
but yeah, no, I'm very much available, and would love to have this conversation or other conversations with people who might be interested to learn more about what we're doing, part of our journey, or what we're building, because we need champions and people who have seen it in other markets.
Yeah.
And I think the way we saw Asia rise. We saw LATAM rise over the last 10 years. Africa is the next game, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So I think really thinking about how you get into Africa, how you get exposure to Africa, I think is really important.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thank you again for being here today. This has been incredible. We'll be cheering you on every step of the way, watching your growth in market as you become a multi-billion brand, and really changing the impact of those in Africa to create that frictionless payment system to really transform their lives, because ultimately that's what it's about. So thank you for being here. Excited for all next steps, and we welcome you back on the show anytime.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you in person, sir.
Likewise. Yes, that's great. All right.
Thank you for listening to Becoming Radical. If today's episode sparked something in you, follow wherever you listen, join the conversation, and share it with someone ready to think beyond limits. Be unlimited, be bold, and become radical. See you next time.